there's just a fear of being seen as who we really are. We're afraid if someone sees all the parts of us, then maybe we're not as lovable because we don't love the dark parts of ourselves.
Because we are human beings that are made to feel the full range of emotions, every experience. And we've been taught that some are good and some are bad when actually they all just are.
And self-care is just caring for yourself in a loving way and making sure that your needs are met before the wants of those around you. Could you give yourself 5 minutes a day where you thought about a life that could be? Because then your brain will start looking for opportunities to implement that. And it might be very small and it might be very gradual, but it will change your trajectory.
What do you want? What looks like light? What feels fun? What feels exciting?
Don't be afraid to be your awkward best self. It's okay if you get the words wrong. Just show up. Keep showing up for you and keep showing up for the people around you. And you will find so much more joy in this life because we were not meant to do life alone.
Get ready to love everything I am. All I want to be and understand. 'Cause I won't dim my light for no one.
They told me I had to pick one thing. No. Diamonds are multifaceted, and so are we. It's about time we let all the parts of us shine. How do we climb out of the box and fully embrace our own authenticity? I'm Carolee, and it's time for the Multi-Passionate Mama podcast, where clarity and creativity go hand in hand.
Hey everyone, welcome to our very first guest interview on the Multi-Passionate Mama podcast. Today's interview is with the remarkable Kristin Wilson. And when I tell you that there is so much gold in this interview, I'm so not kidding. I went back through and listened to our conversation and I'm just blown away again by her wisdom and just how incredibly open she is about everything that she's been through, and she just has so much to share with us, and I know that you're going to get so much out of listening. So I don't want to spend too long talking, and I want to dive right in because it's really so good. So Kristin Wilson is the host of the Solidarity Sister podcast. The podcast and its corresponding Facebook group are designed to empower women with practical tools for building powerful communities and leaning in through both joy and trauma. Kristin knows what it's like to desperately need help and not know how to ask, and to see a friend in need and not know how to show up. She's on a journey to figure this out and is inviting other women to do it alongside her. Kristin has been married for 25 years and is the mother of 8 children. All of her links are in the show notes, so definitely go and check those out. Join her book club, join her Facebook group, follow her follow her Instagram, follow her on Facebook, and definitely go listen to her podcast. I'm so excited to share this interview with you. How are you?
I am doing what I do.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I actually have a friend who told me once, they also have a large family, I have 8 children, that when people ask about their kids, they say they're doing what they do. And it is a way of not putting a judgment. I'm doing well, I'm not doing well. There are some really wonderful things in my life, and there are some really difficult things in my life. So I am just doing what I do.
Yes, we are moving and progressing and going. So I would love to talk about your story and all the amazing things you're doing and your podcasting and how you find a way to do things that you love while being a busy mom.
Well, that is something that you really just have to prioritize. And at some times along my life, I've been really good at that. And then over the last few years, we had a slew of really big trials. My husband almost died of COVID. My parents had health issues. I had two children who had a lot of health issues as well, some hospitalizations and whatnot. And I just was feeling so swamped, and I really didn't do anything for myself anymore. And life really did feel like drudgery. And it was very hard. And ironically, before that, I had been speaking at retreats about cultivating habits of self care and self love. And so I was not utilizing my tools. And I found that the primary tool that was most important for me that I did not use was leaning into community, because I had higher expectations of myself than were actually reasonable for any human. And when I couldn't meet up to that, I felt like I didn't really deserve to be with other people. I didn't have a lot to contribute at that time, which is ironic because I've also been a community builder my whole life, but I always built communities around me where I didn't feel fully part of them. So that's really what my podcast is about. It's all about building community. And it was something I felt really called to do, being a spiritual person, where I really felt like a divine push, like create a podcast and this is what it needs to be about. Whereas I had never planned to be a podcaster until that happened. It was very like divine download. And I was like, I don't even listen to podcasts, but like, okay.
Mhm.
And so that really was a turning point for me between prioritizing doing this podcast that I felt called divinely to do and practicing the skills of community building. And so that when things have gotten hard since then, I make myself reach out to people and I lean in, and I'm learning to receive instead of just give. I've been very generous with time and with finances and whatnot whenever I could all throughout my life, but I've been very stingy on receiving. And so I've been practicing receiving, and being able to do that has allowed me to be more present with my kids and be more alive through, not feeling this need to numb out, which happens
Yes.
when we get overwhelmed. But when we numb out, we can't selectively numb. So if we numb all of our depressive and difficult feelings, we also numb our joy and our capacity for joy. So I'm feeling a lot these days. Some days I have to cry a lot, but then I also feel the joyful moments of sitting reading a book to one of my kids or having a conversation with one of my teens and just being able to interact with them and experience it all. And I think for me, the turning point was honestly getting community involvement. And
Mm.
it's not that people are really doing things for me. Like in small ways, there are people that are as much. It's just that they're present with me and I'm allowing that, and then being seen. You can do your own work so much better.
Yeah, the power of witnessing and the
It's
power of being
huge.
witnessed, like, can't be understated.
Yes. And so I've been creating spaces for myself where I can receive that and give it.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's where I'm
Uh,
at.
I love it, and I'd love to, like, dive into this topic and this idea of, like, because I feel it really, really heavily in myself too, of, like, when things get hard, our natural tendency is to shrink down and disappear. And I've seen this with so many other people too, where it's like, "Oh, I don't want to be a burden on other people with my negativity, and I want to hide my problems from the world because I only want to be this ray of sunshine. I want to express that. I want to be this positive force in the world." So then when I'm struggling, I disappear and I hide. And it doesn't work, because actually what we need the most in those times of struggle is to surround ourselves with other people, because it's not like we actually are alone in our problems. We all, as a community, like, those emotions are universal. Those feelings of being alone, those feelings of disappointment, those feelings of grief, those feelings of life is overwhelming, life is hard, this feels impossible to get through, I don't know what's going to happen next, and that's extremely scary. Like, that fear is a universal emotion that we can all relate to each other on, and it's really helpful when we express that because it helps get us out of that alone feeling. So as you've worked in community and talked to other women, like, why is it that we go hide?
I think that there's just a fear of being seen as who we really are. We're afraid if someone sees all the parts of us, then maybe we're not as lovable because we don't love the dark parts of ourselves. And we have to do the inner work to learn to love all the pieces of us because we think we're doing it for other people. But I actually have been challenged in this and some of the things I've read and Brene Brown and other authors and whatnot. Like when we cannot receive service, love, being uplifted without judging ourselves, if we cannot do that without judging ourselves, we are actually incapable of serving and loving and lifting up other people without having there be a judgment attached.
Mm.
And when I first heard that concept, I was like, that's not true. I am not judging all the people I help. But like, actually, I was putting myself in a role where I can be the helper and you are the receiver. And that is a judgment. And if we really want community, then actually it's powerful to give and powerful to receive. And I
Yeah.
don't know how much you go into like spiritual topics or whatever on this
Yeah.
podcast as much, but, and I find in my own podcast, sometimes stories of my faith help to, illustrate what I'm thinking. But we talk about in Christian culture a lot about how Jesus served and he healed and he did all these things, and he did. And he was a great giver, and he is a great giver today. However, we don't take the time we need to target the stories where he received service. When he goes
Yes.
into the Garden of Gethsemane, he does not go alone. He actually says, will you wait with me, and brings his friends. How powerful is that Jesus asked his friends? Now, they fell asleep and they didn't really come through for him maybe in the way he'd hoped. Okay. So I will say sometimes our friends won't come through for us in the way that we hoped. How many meals do you think that Jesus ate that he did not prepare or pay for?
Like most of
How
them?
many
Like,
times did he stay at someone's house without paying? How many times, there was a woman who came and like anointed his feet with oils, and they were like, she could have taken that, she could have fed the poor, but he received it gratefully. He didn't say, oh no,
yeah.
don't do that. Don't do that for me. Right. Like, so all the stories are there. This is like even a biblical concept. Jesus
Yes.
received service gracefully. He even asked for service. He asked that those apostles would be with him in his hardest time. He did not go alone. That
Mm-hmm.
is such a powerful example for us. And even if you're not a Christian and you're listening to this, and I have really good friends who are Muslim and Jewish and
Those
non-affiliated,
examples exist with
but like the
every.
thing is it's still like most people still will believe Jesus is a great man, even if they don't believe he was a savior. And the principle is still holds true.
Well,
Here,
and those
community
examples
building.
exist with
Yes.
Buddha and Muhammad and every other like amazing like religious leader throughout, like those examples exist. Like the balancing of the giving and the receiving exists throughout
Yeah.
all like enlightened people like that we
And
look to as incredible examples.
yes, and you cannot have a real depth of community and friendship if it doesn't go both ways. I think of a friend of mine who is always there to help and be a listening ear, and she never tells me any of the things that are really hard for her. And so I don't really talk to her as much anymore. If she know, like,
Don't
because
really
I
know
want
her.
there to be a give and take, right? Like I
Yeah.
would like that. I would like to have that, but she hasn't learned that skill yet either, which is okay because we're all on our own journey and it's
Yes.
taken me time. But if there isn't give and take, it actually hinders your friendships.
Well, and it's all based on self-trust, which is one that I'm really learning. Like, if you don't trust your friends to be able to handle your deepest, darkest parts, it's because you don't trust yourself with those deepest, darkest parts. And oh, ouch, that one hit. So when somebody told me that, it was literally like they were coaching me and they were like, oh, hey, Carly, that's because you aren't trusting yourself to open up about these things. And I was like, oh, yeah, that would be me. That would be exactly the thing. Thank you for hitting the nail on the head there. We have to trust that all of those parts are lovable and then love them. We have to take those we have to invite all of ourselves to the table, every single piece. And I love this example of looking at the life of Jesus and seeing how he was such a perfect example of this. I really loved watching The Chosen and seeing that personified in such a beautiful way because, like, specifically his example in there of disappearing to go meditate for like long periods of time and like how he needed his alone time to just regroup and like have his space. Cause I'm like, oh yeah, that's like actually a thing people need. He was not just at the beck and call of his apostles and the people all the time being in service. No, he took the time he needed to be by himself and to pray and commune with his father and like he took that time for himself so that he could then turn around and serve because he would not have been able to do that if he hadn't had his time like alone. And we all need that space in our lives, but especially as moms, like I'm like, we don't get that or give it to ourselves like so frequently. It's like we're just surrounded by those little people all the time.
Oh,
You
for sure.
have, I'm like, do you have any advice on that one? Because I'm sure so.
So
I mean, like you're
I do have
podcasting
some
from
things.
your van,
I do. I'm in
and
my
it's
top passenger
beautiful.
van
I
because
love it.
it's parked in my driveway, and this is how I do all of my podcasts because I have 7 children still living at home. I have 8 total and 3 dogs, and it's the only quiet space, and it works.
I
And it gets
love
me, and
it.
I'm still home, because I do have some that homeschool, and so I am accessible if they really needed to, but then I'm kind of apart. So this is my mobile office.
It's your space, and like you
Yeah.
found like a hub for you.
Yes,
You
which I needed.
found your safe space.
Yes. And I will say one of the things that is, I feel a little bit like, okay, I'm going to compare myself to Brene Brown. I mean, she is way cooler than I am, but
Oh, she's
she is a
amazing, and so are
researcher.
you.
She takes in all the stories and then she looks for patterns. And I have been doing that in all of the interviews that I've been doing, and certain patterns have emerged. And one of them is that self-care is actually at the heart of healthy community building.
Mm.
Because if we aren't caring for ourselves, we are unable to show up fully to give and receive within the community space. So you bring up Jesus going away and doing the self-care, and self-care is not necessarily bubble baths and getting your nails done. It could be if that is something that like is really valuable to you. But what it really is just caring for yourself in a loving way and making sure that your needs are met before the wants of those around you. Like sometimes as a parent, we have to put our kids' needs before our own needs, but we shouldn't be putting our kids' wants before our own needs. Our needs need to be met first. And it's not selfish when done in that way because we actually then have so much more to give. We can show up as a better wife or mom or coworker or friend or sister or aunt or whatever the role that we're playing is when we are caring for ourselves. So some things that I have found that are helpful for me, I have a practice that I talk about, I think in way back in like episode 10 of my podcast, which is called Solidarity Sister for anyone who's looking, but I talk about the loving 5, and it is a process that is scalable, that you are breathing, you're being grateful, you're doing some affirmations, you're moving your body actually comes first. And then you get a drink of water or something that's nutritious for your body. And it's something that you can do in literally 2 minutes, because in 2 minutes, you could move your body. It could be you're a teacher at school and you are walking to the bathroom. Okay. Like you get just enough time. That is your movement. Okay. And then you are breathing. You're taking a few deep breaths. If you only have a few minutes, it might be 3. Then you are really connecting with things you're grateful for, not just in a checklist kind of a way, but in like a very meaningful. I'm so grateful that this one thing worked out this way, kind of a specific, and feeling that gratitude. And then some affirmations, which could be very short, very sweet. And then I like to finish it up with remembering to get a drink of water, or if you haven't eaten for a while because you forgot to eat, because sometimes
Life.
I have ADHD and sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 4 o'clock. I've got no food. That would explain a little bit why I'm lightheaded. Okay, I need to get some food. I fed other people, but I just wasn't thinking. So, and that's it. And so if it's a morning routine, and you have an hour, that could stretch for an hour. You could go on a walk. You could do like a whole, journal your gratitude and your affirmations. There's all kinds of things, but it's also a good in the middle of the day reset. And that practice has been helpful for me because I can literally do it in 2 minutes if that's all I have. That gives me a way to just like recenter myself at any time of day. And you can take 2 minutes. Like, even if I get, people are busy, they feel overwhelmed. Even if your baby's crying and you have to sit your baby down in the crib for 2 minutes, the baby's safe, walk away, recenter yourself, come back. And it gives my mind something to do, like a checklist, like, okay, if I do these things, then I can reset, instead of just like, well, I'm taking my 2 minutes, but now what do I do with it? If I scroll my phone, that's actually not going to give me a real reset. I'm going to think it will, it really doesn't necessarily. Sometimes that's a little dopamine boost, but I find that the Loving Five has been a really good practice for me that I just kind of made up. I don't know. And then I've used it and I've taught it at retreats and whatnot. And it's just been helpful. It's a helpful grounding practice to have something to do. And just being able to say, like, there are some things I need to do. This podcast is really important to me right now. So I have to find the time to do it, but also give yourself the grace to do it if you have to miss an episode or miss a week or things have to go not quite right. That is okay in the season you're in. I find that keeping habits that are important to me, but being flexible on how much time they take and where they're at. I want to read my scriptures every day. Sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's night, sometimes it's the middle of the day, sometimes it's 3 verses, sometimes it's 3 chapters. Having it be scalable and flexible means that I'm more likely to stick with those things that are helpful to me. Because if I'm too rigid about a goal, then if I can't do it in the rigid way, then I'm like, well, give up. It doesn't matter anymore.
Leads to burnout so fast.
And so being able to have a range for every goal that you have, if your goal is to be practicing an instrument because that brings you joy, allow 2 minutes to be enough of a practice, and then cap yourself at 30 minutes in a day, for example. Because that consistency over time, even if you got 2 minutes every day for a month before you got more time, that's still like you got an hour and it took you a whole month, but you're still in it every day. So you're getting that joy every day. I think just finding ways to scale every goal for self-care that you have so that it can be done in a less time and more time, and accepting that 2 minutes was enough. Like, you met the goal. You get a lot of joy from that without it having to take a tremendous amount of time.
Oh, yes. Like, every single step counts. Every single little bit of progress counts. Even if it was like the teeniest, tiniest, littlest, babyest step, even if it was only a teaspoon of water, it still counts. And we have to, like, letting go of the perfectionism and the huge goals that say it's this or nothing, and letting your whatever you can manage in that moment be enough is so important. Like, letting yourself be a human being that, has a different capacity from day to day, because like we're all, well, first of all, as women, we're very cyclical. Like, our capacity is going to actually be different from day to day. It's not going to be consistent. But like, whatever we have going on in our lives is going to affect our ability to show up in various ways. And so we have to give ourselves so much compassion and allow ourselves to be human.
100%. That's the only way through. And that also, if we can do that in a way that we are willing to voice that to others, in a community building setting.
Yeah.
When you share your hard parts, you give permission for other people who are feeling that to feel that way without condemning themselves. You give a voice to the people who aren't able to articulate, yes, that is how I feel. So there's a lot of power if you are willing to share that in different circles where you are. The highs and the lows. I have this goal and I'm going to do this. And also I'm meeting these obstacles. I'm not really sure how to work around them, to be able to experience both. Another like spiritual teaching, because I'm really right now super focused on my spirituality, like hyper focused on increasing that and my connection to the divine. But I recently learned about this concept called lament, which, we have lamentations. I've heard lament before. I've never heard it in this light. And this man, Michael Houston, wrote a book, and it's phenomenal. And he talks about lament as a form of worship. Because in a lot of faith traditions, we start to feel like when we go in prayer, and this can also work with when we talk to our friends, like it's the same, it's relationship building skills. It's using them with God, you can use them with other people. The value of lament as worship is when we are going to God with all of the hard parts and just laying them out bare without feeling the pressure to praise or to be grateful in that moment. And if you look in the scriptures, there's actually a lot of accounts of lamenting where they don't always turn to praise and to gratitude. There is a place for praise and it's valuable, and there is a place for gratitude and it's valuable. But sometimes life has become so difficult that we can only feel lament. And if we take that to God, it is a form of worship. We are saying, this is where I am, and I trust you with all of where I am, which is different than complaining or murmuring, because complaining and murmuring, they separate us from God. They're more like complaining about God behind his back. You're unjust, you're doing this, like, why did you, whatever. If we are feeling those feelings, God's big enough for those. We can go to God and say, I feel like you're being unfair. I feel like you've done this. I am angry. Like, God can take all of it. But being able to allow all of those emotions, again, it's the same thing. It's the not numbing out. And it's a community building skill for us. When we have someone who comes to us with their lament, what do we do? I think it's really insightful that when Jesus came and Lazarus had died, Mary and Martha and Lazarus were his dear friends. He didn't come in time. They were angry at Jesus. They were frustrated. They were disappointed because they believed in Jewish tradition that if you were 4 days dead, you were really dead. If you were resurrected, you could come back to life within the first 3 days because the spirit hung close to the body. But on the fourth day, you're really dead. And that's when Jesus comes. It's too late. If you'd been here, you could have saved my brother, our brother. And it's the shortest verse of scripture, which is great for people who want to memorize scriptures and aren't good memorizers.
Yeah.
John chapter 11, verse 35.
Jesus
wept. He sees their lamentation.
Which feels like such permission for all of us to just take a moment and just
mourns with them.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, don't worry about it. I'm here now. I'm going to fix it. Just give me 10 minutes. I'm going to raise him from the dead. Like, this isn't, because those are the things that we want to do in community. When someone comes to us and they say, my child has cancer. Oh, God has a plan for you. Okay, we're not saying that to comfort them, even though it's true. And I do believe that. We are saying that to comfort ourselves because we haven't learned to sit in the lament position that person is in. And that is a community building skill for ourselves, to be comfortable sitting in the uncomfortable without fixing it and just mourning. And when we do that and we see people, they then are empowered to move through processing those difficult emotions, and they can get to the praise and to the gratitude and to the problem solving. They'll get there, but they'll actually get there faster if we just sit with them where they are. But it's hard. That is a community building skill, and another way where, like, Jesus showed us how to do it.
Well, and what's more is, like, that's actually like a parenting skill as well.
Yes.
When kids are struggling and in pain and something happened, to not brush off the hurt that they are feeling and to be like, you're fine, go walk it off, go,
Right?
like, so often, like, that's the model we were shown, was like, let's fix your pain, let's tell you why it doesn't matter. Instead, as parents, to just witness our children's life experience, to witness their emotions, and to just sit with them in it. Like, that's actually kind of what we're supposed to do, is to just let it exist, because we are human beings that are made to feel the full range of emotions, every experience. And we've been taught that some are good and some are bad when actually they all just are. And it's the meaning making behind the scenes that was coming out of the closet going, oh, no, this one's bad for this reason and this is good. And it's like, no, it all just is. And if you can let those emotions just be and just witness, not just other people's, but your own. Just like be that neutral observer and be like, oh, that's interesting. How that anger is just crunching up my chest, tightening it all up, making, that's really interesting. And then like let it exist and then flow as it does. Same with grief, same with pain. Same, instead of trying to force its way out, which makes it cling on longer because you're refusing to let it exist and be. Like we were made for all of the emotions. And like you were saying before, when you try to get rid of the ones you've deemed negative or bad, you get rid of all of them. You numb out the whole range. You can't just selectively decide to get rid of some of them.
100%, 100%. And I think that is just one of the most important life skills for us. And I like the use of witness. And I like to think of it like the different roles we might have if you are a witness versus if you are the judge, right? The judge is looking at all of the facts in order to make judgments about what's going on. A witness, your job as a witness is just to observe and relate what the facts are without judgment. You are actually not supposed to be giving your opinions as a witness. You are supposed to be giving the facts of what you saw. And so sometimes for me, if I start to get into like a judger mode, because we can all do that, it's very human nature to do that, to think, okay, but how could I, what would I think, or how would I look at this as a witness? What can I just observe? And that helps pull me back into the space that I want to be in. Because judgment really doesn't help us and it doesn't really help other people. There are judgments we have to make about, do we feel safe or not? Do we have to honor a boundary to keep ourselves and our children and whatnot safe? But there are a lot of judgments we make on an everyday basis about ourselves and about others that we do not need and that do not make our lives better. And so the more that we can let go of those, the happier we actually will be.
Yeah, and we are the harshest judges on our own selves.
Yes.
And so many of the judgments that we make, we don't have all the facts for. And we're just like rushing to conclusions of like, nope, I decided. I decided that you were thinking this about me. I decided that meant this, and now I'm gonna believe it and act on it. And it's like, wait a minute, we're deciding things far too quickly. And if we had been neutral observers for just a hair longer, then our whole, the whole experience would be different.
I totally agree with you. But it's hard. It can be hard, but we get better at it with time.
Yeah.
And I find that the people who are the harshest judges of others, it's because that's what their internal self-talk is. And so if someone is being really harsh to you, one of the phrases I teach my kids is, how others treat you is a reflection of them. And
I
how
love
you
it.
treat others is a reflection of you. So someone can come at me and they can be rude and condescending or fighting mad or whatever. And that is a reflection of who they are, where they are in their life, what experiences they're having, a combination of their life experiences, their trauma, their, character or whatnot. How I respond is up to me. And I can still respond and be kind. I like kind over nice. Nice pretends, and kind has boundaries, but is just kind in the delivery of those boundaries and, respectful. But we can respond to someone in a way that reflects who we want to be and not give away our power to someone else. She made me mad. I did it because that's because how they acted that way, because it's a reflection of them. What do you want the reflection of you to look like?
Oh, I love that. Okay, I think you're gonna love my favorite quote, which I say all the time, but I think you're gonna love it. It's from Frozen. And it's people make bad choices when they're mad or scared or stressed. Are you familiar with the song?
I do. I am. I have
Love
multiple
it.
Frozen lovers.
I
My
know. So
18-year-old had
much
a birthday
Frozen.
party years ago where we did custom pillowcases with
Ooh,
Frozen
so
trans.
fun.
Watched Frozen and did the whole, yeah. And now my 6-year-old dresses up as Elsa regularly. We're
I
continuing
love
the
it.
tradition. So yes, Frozen 2,
Yeah. So
I think is better than Frozen 1, but
Frozen
they,
2 is fabulous. And I quote that one too. Like, do the next right thing. Like, that's my other like favorite Frozen quote. But people make bad choices when they're mad or scared or stressed, which is like basically the same thing you were saying. And I love that one because it helps me reflect on myself as well as other people. Like, oh, wait, I also make bad choices when I haven't peed all day because I was running around doing all the errands and I didn't want to pause to like do a little bit of self-care. Like, and I haven't eaten all day because same reason. Or I haven't, I got screamed at for 4 hours and I was overwhelmed with sound and like, oh, like I need to take a minute to take care of myself so that I can regulate and then come back and be a better person. And the reason I was snippy was because I didn't do the things I needed to do. And oh, hey, my husband being snippy probably because he was mad or scared or stressed. My kid probably that bad attitude has something to do with being mad or scared or stressed. Like we all, when we make bad choices, it probably has something to do with being dysregulated and being mad or scared or stressed for some reason. And if we can look at it from that perspective, then it changes because it changes our attitude toward the person, including ourselves, because all of a sudden we have more compassion for that person because we're like, I've been there. I know what it's like to be acting out of that dysregulated place. And now I can go look at the actual cause of their behavior, like needing a drink of water or needing whatever they need, instead of being offended by the actual thing they said. Like, I
100%.
hope that my husband will be forgiving of me when I'm cranky because of whatever. I hope he'll ignore the mean thing I said when I was hungry, right?
Yes, being hangry is a real thing. I have
Oh,
some
yes.
children in particular that, like, when they're out of control, you're like, just feed them. Just get them at least like a spoonful of peanut butter or something to
Carry
start.
a
What do we
Snickers
give this
around.
kid? Like, yes, we got to get something in this kid, and then they'll be so much easier to
Those
deal with.
Snickers commercials were like so spot on. Do you remember those
Yes.
Snickers
Oh, I do.
commercials with the person would turn into a monster and then the person they'd pull out a Snickers and be like, "Here you go," and then they'd turn back into a human being.
100%. 100%. No,
Like,
it's
yes.
accurate. Hanger is real.
Yeah. But so is like being overstimulated with noise or touch or like all sorts of different ways in which we could be caring for ourselves and haven't noticed or paused long enough to do it. And it's like, especially as moms, like we need to be doing that. But then, we can be teaching our kids that, like, wait a minute, notice what it is you need and then go give it to yourself. And it's not out of selfishness, it's out of you show up better and less cranky to everyone else when you've done the thing you needed to do for you.
100%. And if you model that for your kids, you are teaching them that it is okay for them to take time for themselves, which a
Yeah.
lot of moms have not done. And then the kid gets the message. The mom thinks they're sending the message, you're like more valuable, you're the kid, I'm gonna, build you up. But the message that the kid gets is, it's not okay for me to care for myself if someone else has something going on. I shouldn't ever put myself first. I shouldn't ever prioritize my own needs. I should always do other people first. And that long term doesn't really serve the child in the way that you think it will, because you think you're sending a different message, but really your example, the more I learn as a parent, the more I learn that becoming the best possible person I can as an individual is the best thing I can do as a mom. Like, am I a person that if my kid became like me, that I would be sad or upset or disappointed by? Or not that I'm saying that they need to be like me, because I have 8 children who are all totally different from each other. And one or two have some similarities to me, but we're all different. We have so much diversity of personality. I don't know what happened in our gene pool. There's just a lot going on. I want them to all have permission to be their best selves in the way that they were designed for, whether that looks like me or not. But is the quality of person that I am, is the way that I show up in relationships, is the way that I speak to people, the way that I care for myself, the way that I spend my time, are those principles things that I would want them to copy me on? And if not, then I've identified things that I need to change in myself. And that those things will make me a better mom, because your example speaks so much louder than the words that you speak to your children.
Yes, they do not listen to anything we say. Like, not a single freaking word. They do not listen, but they will copy exactly what you do. And it's astounding and amazing to watch that happen as they literally like do exactly what you do.
They
But
do.
it's so much about like your beliefs in yourself
Mm-hmm.
will transfer to them. And so if you believe in your own worth, they will believe in their own worth. And if you don't believe in your own worth, you can't instill that in them.
100%. And
That's
if
what
you, yes,
one
if
of the
you're
hardest things to
listening,
learn is
yes, if
like,
you're listening and you're like, I am not good at that. So here is my
oh,
response to you. You have identified an area for growth. And your child will see, if you develop this, that when they identify an area for growth, that they can grow in that thing too. It isn't too late. Even if your children are adults, there are things that I am doing that still affect my adult children. I have kids in their 20s and my youngest is 6. And they see what you're doing at all of those ages. And so if you're like, well, I did not do that very well. Okay, we have identified an area for growth. What are you going to do next about it? Maybe you need to do some therapy work. Maybe you need to do some trauma release. Like, I don't know what the thing is for you. I just know it's available. And you just need to ask yourself and get really still with yourself. What do you need? And go on that journey for yourself. And it will still impact your kids, even your older kids. So sometimes we listen to a podcast and we're like, oh my gosh, that's so great. And I am terrible at that. And I could never do that. No, you can. You haven't done it yet, maybe, but you have identified an area for growth. So, what are the small, small steps? Maybe it's reading some books. Maybe it's listening to some uplifting podcasts. Maybe it's giving yourself permission to do some things that bring you joy and just rediscovering what play looks like for you, because maybe that's what you need.
yeah,
I don't know what it is, but I know your body knows what it is. And if you get
yeah,
quiet with your body, you'll know what the thing is
so
for you.
true. Yeah, I've been on this self-development journey. Well, and when it comes down to self-care, I saw or I heard this really incredible speech at Toastmasters yesterday by this woman I know named Brett Miller, and she's incredible. She's actually in the Tabernacle Choir, by the way. So she's amazing. And she talked about the difference between limited self-care and profound self-care. Limited self-care being all the ways like drinking water, going on a walk, taking a bubble bath, all of these ways in which we like can take care of our physical and emotional and mental needs on a kind of temporary basis. But then profound self-care is really, and these are more like my words, like the really deep-seated personal development work that has like really long lasting implications, like building your self-esteem, understanding your true divine nature and your worth at your core, like, and how that stuff is really, it's almost intangible. It's not about taking a walk, it's about taking that deep dive that takes years and years to really understand like the ways in which you haven't loved yourself over the course of your life, and how you can learn how to love yourself more. Not because it's almost like we don't even do it for ourselves, we do it for our kids, right? We do it because we want to make sure that we're the best parents we can be. It's such a good motivator, right? Like, but how important that is, and how the better, I don't know, the more that we can step into who we are and our own value and our own worth, it has this ripple effect that just doesn't quit. And it's incredible and so valuable.
I like that thought, like the profound self-care versus the basic self-care.
And
And it
it's
can
not that the other
happen
stuff's not
in small ways.
important. Like that
Yeah.
stuff's like essential on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. Like I was saying, like I absolutely need to like take a step back and breathe, and like you have to take care of those temporal physical needs as they arise, but also the deep work is really important too.
It is. And it can just happen in small snippets of our day. And sometimes I think people don't know where to start. I recently did a podcast episode on just a mini-sode on the addition principle, which is that
Mhm.
when you're trying to change a behavior, it is more powerful to focus on what you're going to add to your life than what you are trying to let go of for like a bad habit. So with food, it might look like I feel like I eat too many desserts or drink too much soda or drink too much alcohol or whatever the thing is. So if you focus on not having as much of those things, what does your brain want? More of those
More.
things, right? So instead, it's like, I am going to focus on getting 10 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, 10 servings. And that is my focus. That is the win. If you do that, you will naturally consume less desserts. You will naturally consume less soda. You will naturally consume less alcohol, whatever your thing is. Or maybe it's I really like cool drinks, so I'm gonna come up with how many flavor combinations of sparkling water can I put together for myself, and I'm gonna drink them in really fun glasses if soda or alcohol are the issue that someone is having. Just those little things, the addition principle. And I have a friend who is an advocate for those who have been trafficked. She is a victim of sex trafficking, and she has been pulled in by government officials, by private, public organizations. She has spoken to large crowds, small crowds to try and teach people. And she found herself, after she was trafficked, in an abusive marriage with her children, and she felt very stuck. And she also has some health issues. And so, what do you do when it's so dark? Like, how do you find your way out? And she talked about this, that she every day started spending some time dreaming about what life could look like. And that's the only thing she did. She's not taking any action yet. She's still married to this abusive man. She's not, really doing a lot otherwise. What could life be like? And gave herself permission to dream. And then over time, she left the abusive marriage. She has better relationships with her kids. They're in a safer position. She's become this advocate. She's a real agent for change. She's helped lots of women find resources. Just she's done all these things. And it started with permission to dream about what if life was different? What could it look like?
Hmm.
And so, for anyone who's listening, who's thinking, well, that all sounds well and good, I can't imagine doing any of that. Could you give yourself 5 minutes a day where you thought about a life that could be? Because then your brain will start looking for opportunities to implement that. And it might be very small and it might be very gradual, but it will change your trajectory.
I love that so much, the addition principle. And it's literally looking for the addition, looking for the light, looking for the dream. And the question I want to ask is like, what do you want? What looks like light? What feels fun? What feels exciting? It's like you're allowed to daydream. We often feel like we're not. Like that's a waste of time. Like that's not productive and we need to keep hustling for our worth. But you're allowed and encouraged. And we're going to encourage you right now. Spend a little time enjoying your life. This has been so amazing, and I've just loved talking with you. As we wrap up, tell us where we can find your podcast, and if there's any other places you want us to join you, any like
Sure,
your community on
absolutely.
Facebook.
Yes. So my podcast is called Solidarity Sister, has an exclamation. We're really just in it together. It's Solidarity Sister with Kristin Wilson, and it can be found on anywhere that you're listening to a podcast. You'll find it. Most people find it on Apple Podcasts, but about 25% are coming from other places. I also have a Facebook group called Solidarity Sister, or I think it's just Solidarity Sister with Kristin Wilson also. But if you find the podcast, all of that information is going to be in the show notes of every episode. I'm running a book club right now that we're toward the end of, but if someone wanted to join, they could, about Brene Brown's Gifts of Imperfection. And when that ends, we will be starting another book. So if you like being able to get together on Zoom and talk to people about, really great ideas for how to improve our lives, that is a good space to be in. And the podcast also has a Facebook and an Instagram if you want to follow either of those to be able to see new episodes coming out. And later this year, I'm actually going to be launching a group coaching program. And the group coaching will bring women together in groups of 6 to 12. We're going to go through a 12-week program together. And for anyone who's like, I just don't know how to connect, and I feel like I'm doing life in isolation. Like I don't know who to reach out to when I need help. I don't have the tools to reach out to someone else when they are struggling. This is perfect for you because you're going to learn those skills in a community with a cohort of your soon-to-be besties that you can continue on with after you finish the 12 weeks. So it's going to be a really beautiful community building experience. So join the Facebook group, follow the podcast, you'll get more information. And that's something I'm really excited about. I'm not quite finished in the development, so I'm not ready to launch quite yet, but it is coming.
That's so exciting. Oh, I'm so happy for you. That's amazing. So, as we finish up, do you have any final words to share with us?
I think just don't be afraid to be your awkward best self. If you need someone to talk to, reach out even awkwardly. Feel who feels safe and do that. And if someone you know is going through something and you don't know how to reach out, if you get your intention right, you almost can't do it wrong, even if you're awkward. If you're going to talk to someone because you think they're going to spill the tea, you're not coming from a heart-centered place. So that's maybe check yourself first, right? But if you're coming in a way that you really want to reach out in love, it's okay if you get the words wrong. Just show up. Keep showing up for you and keep showing up for the people around you. And you will find so much more joy in this life because we were not meant to do life alone.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
Yeah,
I appreciate
absolutely. This has been amazing. I hope everyone goes and listens to your amazing podcast.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Multi-Passionate Mama podcast. I know that we can never be told too many times how amazing we are, so in case you haven't been told today, you are a freaking rock star. When you let yourself shine, you allow other people to take off their filters and shine brightly too. It's about time someone gave you permission to be all of you. If you enjoyed this show, please leave me a review and hit that subscribe button. I know you want more of this. Sharing is caring. Let someone you love know how incredible they are by texting them the link to this episode. They'll feel so good just knowing that you thought about them. And lastly, if you want to know more about my courses and coaching, be sure to check out my website for up-to-date details on everything I have available. It's caroleegarrison.com and the link is in the show notes. Always remember that you are a diamond. Don't let anyone dim your sparkle.